Okay, today we are going to conclude the overview of the Unit 7, which is fundamentals of the nervous system. We last left off with what is the difference between sympathetic and parasympathetic divisions. The next requirement is that students will define the two major parts of the motor divisions, somatic and autonomic. Well, newsflash, you did that right there. So we don't need to do it again. So let's go to the next requirement. Students will compare the function, typo, of the sympathetic nervous system to the parasympathetic nervous system. Newsflash, that's the last thing you did last class. You don't need to do it again. So let's keep going. How does signal transmission occur across a synapse? This is what we need to look at. So if you guys can look up here, I know you do not have this drawing on your handout, so please look up at the screen. My red marker here is going to represent an action potential. Look at how it's traveling down the neuron. And now here's the big question. How does it go from one neuron to the next neuron? That's what we need to figure out. It goes from one neuron to another neuron at the synapse, which is where they meet. I want to delve deeper and find out how it actually jumps from the presynaptic neuron to the postsynaptic neuron. Now, if I can ask you all for a show of hands, once again, how many of you have taken psychology? A lot of you. So let's see here. You don't need to draw this, just pay attention. The signal is traveling this direction. The synapse is right here, where I'm highlighting blue, where the two meet. What do we call the neuron that actually comes before the synapse? Anybody know? The presynaptic neuron. The presynaptic neuron. The presynaptic neuron is the neuron that sends the signal. Riddle me this. What part of a presynaptic neuron is in the actual synapse where the two meet? Very good. Axon terminal. Now, what do we call the neuron that is after the synapse? Postsynaptic neuron. What part of the postsynaptic neuron is a component of the synaptic cleft or the synapse itself? The dendrites or the soma, could be one or the other. Okay, great. Now, let's look at here. That is the presynaptic neuron. What are those little bubbles inside, or the presynaptic axon terminal? What is that? Those are synaptic vesicles. And what is carried inside those synaptic vesicles? Those are neurotransmitters. Some neurotransmitters are dopamine. When you guys go get your phones at the end of the period and you see you've missed 10 messages, and you're all excited. Oh boy, who's trying to talk to me? Makes me feel special. That's dopamine. Dopamine is like a feel-good neurotransmitter. A week from now is Thanksgiving. Some of you might celebrate that. And after you have your big meal, you're going to be passed out on the couch. What neurotransmitter knocks you out? No, tryptophan is an amino acid. Melatonin. Tryptophan triggers melatonin. All right. What is the neurotransmitter that causes your muscles to contract? Acetylcholine. There's lots of neurotransmitters and they all have different functions. The neurotransmitters open up these little channels right here so that an action potential can reach here. The neurotransmitters open up those channels. Ions pass through those channels and the action potential continues. But if the neurotransmitters don't open those channels, then the action potential is dead on arrival. So what I would like to do with you guys first is I want to go through the sequence of what is happening between the action potential being on the presynaptic cell to the action potential being on the postsynaptic cell. So you can put this on the back of your paper. This is going to be the stages of signal transmission. Okay. a lot of these you should know from last unit. This really shouldn't be very new. Number one, an action potential travels down a presynaptic neuron. Kylie, would you mind closing the door for me? An action potential reaches the axon terminal. That's kind of what you're seeing in that image on the left. That red arrow could very well be an action potential. Synaptic vesicles for step 3. Synaptic vesicles carrying neurotransmitters diffuse the neurotransmitters into the cleft. Step 4. Neurotransmitters travel across the cleft. Now, based on what you guys can interpret from that diagram on the left, what do the neurotransmitters bind with on the other side, on the postsynaptic cell? The receptors. Neurotransmitters bind with receptors on the surface of the postsynaptic cell. It's a lot of vocab terms here. I'm going to take a moment. Action potential, presynaptic neuron, action potential, axon terminal, synaptic vesicles, neurotransmitter, cleft. I mean, look at all this stuff. You guys really have to know what you're talking about here. A lot of terms. 2 more steps. Step 6. The gated channels open. And finally, what passes through those channels to continue the action potential onto the new cell? Just no, that's for muscles. And in fact, with what you're thinking, acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter that basically opens the channel. But I want to know what passes through the channel. What is the action potential caused by? Ions. It's caused by ions. So ions travel through the channel and continue the action potential. Okay. By the way, speaking of ions, can you all tell me what 2 ions are involved in a action potential? Sodium, potassium. You've seen that at ad nauseum by now. You may not have thought, what's the big deal of sodium and potassium? They are two examples of the stuff that's in Gatorade. What is this stuff? Electrolytes. Electrolytes allow you to properly communicate with your muscles and make them do what you want them to do when you want them to do them. If you don't have enough electrolytes in your system, your muscles may start to contract and act without your control. We call that a muscle cramp. If you are a fan of football in September when it's really hot, the first week of the season, like college football, pro football, you see a lot of players get cramps towards the end of the game because it's really hot. They've been sweating all game. By the time they get to the fourth quarter, they have like no electrolytes left. Now, if you're in high school, they'll give you Gatorade. You have bananas on the sideline. When your grandparents were in school, they would actually give you a salt tablet. You chew on the salt tablet and get all the electrolytes that way. But let's say you're playing for USF or Florida State, Miami, whoever, and you have a cramp on the field and you're their best player. They need you back on the field as quick as possible, but you have a cramp and it hurts. Gatorade isn't going to be fast enough. It has to go through your digestive system. It has to diffuse into your bloodstream. That's too long. So can you tell me something that college teams and pro teams do to get the electrolytes into your system as soon as they can, as fast as they can? An IV. They just hook you up to an IV, intravenous drip, and basically pump you full of electrolytes. What's up, Lance? All right. Okay. Let's identify these parts of a synapse. First is the axon terminal. Is the end of a pre or post? Presynaptic neuron or postsynaptic neuron? Right. Part of a presynaptic neuron that releases neurotransmitters. The synaptic cleft is where the pre and the postsynaptic neurons meet. Neurotransmitters are the chemical messages passed between neurons. What do we call the receiving neuron? One more time. Postsynaptic neuron. And what do we call the neuron that is sending the signal? Presynaptic neuron. All right. Let's move forward. We just did this, so we're good here. Students will analyze how neurotransmitters are used to communicate to neurons. We just talked about that. So I don't think you guys have this next one, so I just want you to play along with me here. See if you can tell me what are the parts of an action potential. I don't think this is on your paper, but we did this yesterday. So let's see if you remember the parts. I'm going to highlight them. Well, don't tell me the numbers. Just tell me the part of the action potential curve, the graph. Resting state, resting potential. I want to ask you a few things about the resting state. Here's the first question. About what millivolts is the resting potential at? About -70. What ions are predominantly inside the cell? Potassium. What's predominantly outside? Sodium. Very good. Okay, you experience the stimulus. That's going to trigger this next stage. Depolarization. What ion is moving into the cell? Sodium is moving in. What is the highest voltage millivoltage you can get to on an action potential? Positive 40. Okay, once you get to positive 40, you're on the decline. What is this? What ion is moving out? Potassium. So I want to ask you something. When we were over here in the action potential, what ion was inside mostly? Nope. Potassium. By the time you get over to the repolarization, where's potassium? So it's supposed to be in, now it's out. Where was sodium when we started the resting potential? Outside. By the time you get to repolarization, where is it? So it's totally flip-flop. Sodium should be outside, it's inside. Potassium should be inside, it's outside. We have to get things back to normal. And that's going to be this step. What is that? Hyperpolarization. What pump puts the potassium back in and the sodium back out? Sodium potassium pump. And the fact that I call it a pump means that it is run by ATP. And if it's run by ATP, is it active or passive? Good. All right. Very good. Here's the conclusion of today. Vocab. Now, there's a few terms here I'm going to break off and go over. So I'm going to kind of come over here, guys. I want to make sure you all understand two phenomena before I continue. So if you just want to watch and learn. First one, who is the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers? Tom Brady. What number is Tom Brady? Number 12. And what position does Tom Brady play again? What is one of the quarterback's jobs? Throw the ball. So he's the QB. Can you tell me the number of one of the guys that Tom Brady throws the football to? We know you don't watch the sports. Anybody know a number of a receiver that Brady throws to? 87, Gronkowski. Great. And he is a receiver. The reason I'm bringing this up is this is, I think, a worthy analogy for the nervous system. Tom Brady throws a football to Gronkowski. In the nervous system, we would call Tom Brady the effector. Now, nobody pronounces it like I just did, effector. They say it like this, effector. Gronkowski would be called the effector. Nobody pronounces it like I just did. They don't say effector, they say effector. So it's really hard to tell the difference, effector, 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 effector. The effector is the sender of a signal. The football itself is the signal. And the effector, you can call it two things. You can call it the receiver, or you can call it the target. So I have an analogy for you. Here's Sebastian. Elf on a shelf, Sebastian. There's a big old mosquito drinking his blood. He feels it. What part of his nervous system detects the bug? Sensory, very good. So sensory input detects the bug. What part of his nervous system is actually feeling this? Peripheral or central? Peripheral. Where is the signal? There's a bug on my arm drinking my blood. Where is that signal going to be sent to? It's going to be sent to the central. So a sensory input, when you see something, you smell something, you hear something, you taste something, all your senses, they go from your peripheral to your central. I'm sure that every single one of you played kickball in elementary school. That's like a rite of passage. Everybody plays kickball. Anybody not play kickball? Horrible childhood if you didn't. It's Emma's turn to kick, and she sees the ball being pitched to her. She's so excited. Okay, now it's my time to shine. All eyes on me. She sees the ball coming at her. What part of this whole loop is that? Is that sensory? Is that integration? Or is that motor? Sensory. What part of her nervous system detects the ball? Peripheral or central? Peripheral. Where is the signal? I see a kickball coming at me. Where is that signal going to be sent to? Very good. What stage comes after sensory? Integration. Where does integration take place? Central or peripheral? This is in your central nervous system. Basically, what's happening in Emma's mind is almost instinctual. She has very little time to think about it. It's saying, there's a kickball coming at me. What am I going to do about it? And that's where we get to the final step. And what is the final step? Motor. I went from a mosquito to kickball, so whatever. Motor output. Let's go back to the mosquito. He feels the mosquito on his arm, and he goes, okay, there's a mosquito biting me. What am I going to do about this mosquito? His body, his brain is going to instruct his other arm to come around and swat the mosquito. Where did the signal come from for this act? It came from the central. Where is it going? Peripheral. Now, let's talk about what specific structure did that signal come from that says, I'm going to kill that bug? His brain. And what is the target of the signal that he is sending to kill that bug? What is the target? The muscles in his arm. That is correct. So using the two terms I said earlier with Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski, what was his brain? The effector. And what are the muscles in his arm? Very good. This has gotten my earlier classes today. I want to be sure you all understand this properly. All right, so let's go to sensory input. This is stimuli that is perceived by our senses. Aubrey, are you following along with us? So you see something, you hear something, you smell something, you taste something, you touch something. Oh, that water is cold. Oh, that burger tastes good. Whoa, they're cute. Oh, what's that smell? Wow, I like this song. All your different senses are stimulated. That is sensory input. Music is a stimulus. A delicious burger is a stimulus. A cute person is a stimulus. Cold weather in the air is a stimulus. All those things just engage your nervous system. Integration combines sensory perceptions in higher cognitive function. Sometimes things happen so fast that we don't have time to think about it. We just act on instinct. You're driving down Dale Mabry and a car is going the wrong direction. You don't have time to go, there's a car coming at me. What am I going to do about it? You just have to act. If you're a baseball player, there's a baseball coming right at your face. You don't have time to think about it. There's a baseball. It's going to kill me. What do? You just act. When you put your hand on a stove, it's a reflex arc. You just remove it. Sometimes we don't have time to think, so you just have your reflexes. And that's what we depend on to survive. Reflexes can be like the difference between life and death sometimes. Motor output. The nervous system activates effector organs. These could be your muscles, or your glands, or some other structure, your heart, your digestive organs. Next, we will do the central nervous system. You can write CNS, but my rule is you're not allowed to write abbreviations if you don't know what they mean. If I asked Alex, what does CNS stand for? She goes, cheerleading, news, stat, chicken noodle soup. Yeah, you're not allowed to write the abbreviation unless you know what it stands for. I go to PHS. Yeah, what's that? I don't know. Central nervous system. What two structures make up your central nervous system? Brain and spinal cord. This controls and activates the body. Your peripheral nervous system, you can call it the PNS. These are, I'm 0 for 3 today with my anatomy kids. You guys are my 4th class. What else is there left in the nervous system besides brain and spinal cord? Yeah, year after year, people just go, I don't know. It's just a thing. We don't think of the nerves. The nerves are everywhere. It's how you feel your environment or you sense your environment. Your nerves, they relay messages to the central nervous system. All right. Number 6. We have the sensory division. Comes from sensory organs. What are some sensory organs? Your skin, sure. What else? Eyes, nose, ears, mouth. There you go. From sensory organs to the central nervous system. It collects info. Ooh, the air is cold. That cake is good. Wow, that music sucks. Ooh, that is terrifying. You see a scary clown or something. Your senses are stimulated, and your central nervous system interprets them. Okay, motor division. Transmits impulses. See if you can help me out here. It transmits impulses from what to what? CNS to PNS. To cause an effect or action. All right, somatic. Voluntary control of body movement. You guys have 11 systems in your body. What's the only one that you actually have conscious control over? Your skeletal muscle system. It's kind of weird. Your body is your body. You hear all these things about my body, my choice, whatever it is. I want to get a piercing, Dad, I'm going to get one. You only have control of one of 11 systems. Think about that. You don't have control. Well, you have a choice as to whether it gets used, but do you control your ovulation? Do you control your menstrual cycle? No. That's one you can live without. I'm talking about the one that you can only have control over. Autonomic nervous system. This is everything else. This is control of bodily functions, not consciously directed. Sympathetic nervous system. Is this calming or is this stress? This is stress. Sympathetic is a response to a threat. Your adrenaline's pumping. You're engaged. Fight or flight. Mm. Fluids, digestion, secretions. There must be a disconnect between your subconsciousness and all the effectors that receive the signal. Okay, parasympathetic is calming and returning to a normal state. Next one's pretty easy. A neuron, nerve cell. Next, we have a synapse. Site of transmission of electric nerve impulses between two neurons. They don't actually touch. All right. Two more for the regular vocab, and the rest of them are going to be just content vocab or academic vocabulary, terms that we use every day, but they are associated with nervous system. In this case, we have a graded potential. A change in the electrical potential on the membrane of an excitable cell. And the last content term, action potential. Change in electrical potential associated with the passage of an impulse along the membrane of a muscle fiber or neuron. Okay. We have 9 more. Transmission, sending of electrical signals. Localized. Restrict to a particular place or part of the body. Propagate, like propaganda, spread and promote. Integrate, combine one thing with another, so they become whole. Effector, organ or cell that acts in response to a stimulus. Stimulate. Encourage development of or increased activity. Some of you have asked me what this next term means. You've seen it on your tests. Inhibit means to hinder, restrain, prevent. Nikita tried to enter the Lightning game without a ticket, so the ushers inhibited his entry. There's construction in downtown Tampa, so I am inhibited from driving down Channelside Drive. 2 more. Permeability. The ability of material to pass through a membrane. And lastly, concentration. It does not mean to think really hard in this sense. It means a close gathering, that there's a high concentration of high schoolers in this classroom. And that is all. Next time we get together, we will start Unit 8.